Okay, hey everyone, and it's James Preston here on the Legacy Leavers podcast, and with me is Terence Pillay, the one, the only TP from East Coast Radio, from GloTV, from South Africa's entertainment industry. Terence Pillay, it is a privilege to have you on Legacy Leavers.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here. I like the idea of Legacy Leavers, actually.
Thank you. What do you like about it?
I love the fact that you're leaving something behind that's not a building or it's not something material.
Thank you.
I like that you leave something that would live on. That's great. It's a good idea for me.
Well, considering you really like that, I have to get this little quote. I heard this amazing quote yesterday where someone asked a question: what are you building today that will be remembered in 200 to 300 years' time? So that's what it's all about for me. Everybody has been born with greatness, and they have a legacy to leave. And my goal is to try and help people find that legacy.
Well, I mean, there is the whole idea of some people have greatness thrust upon them, hey?
Correct. Some people have greatness thrust upon them, like royalty,
Like
the
Perez
British.
Hilton.
Correct. But everybody is as valuable and as great as a Perez Hilton. But we've got to bring it out of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to take up too much time about that because you have another meeting to get to. I want to talk about blogging.
Okay.
You were on the show this morning. I'm privileged enough to work here at East Coast Radio. And big thank you to East Coast's program manager, Zane Derbyshire, for allowing me to use the facilities. But I'm privileged enough to work here at East Coast Radio and also blog, right? So this morning, you were talking about blogging.
Yeah.
And you had some interesting things to say. One of the things that came across quite strongly was that you aren't a big fan of bloggers calling themselves experts. Now, that's interesting. Let's talk about Perez Hilton, right?
Yeah.
Would you say Perez Hilton is an expert?
No. Well, I think he might be now, but he didn't
Right.
start out that way.
Okay, that's good. So, but at what point does a blogger become an expert?
I think when you go out and study whatever it is you're blogging about, okay, let me just put it in perspective. I consume blogs voraciously. I read a lot, the good, the bad, and the ugly of blogs. So let's take someone like Perez Hilton, who started off in a coffee shop. He was slagging off Hollywood celebrities and that kind of thing. And then over the years, he developed this following, and he had gone out and did TV, and he had done films and all that kind of thing. And he made himself an expert. He's gone out, he's learned about fashion. So he's not just spouting drivel about fashion. He now, it comes from a place of knowing and from a place of knowledge. And that's, I think, what I'm talking about in terms of bloggers. There was the one blogger who wrote about, called himself a fashion blogger, and he was writing about this black velvet dress that came out, but said he loved the suede. So that person didn't know, he couldn't tell the difference between suede and velvet. And that for me is a problem. If you call yourself a fashion blogger, the one guy didn't know the difference between coriander and rosemary. So for me, if you call yourself a food blogger, you should have a rudimentary command of or rudimentary knowledge of what you're talking about.
So would you say the problem then is more labeling and self-titling themselves? Because obviously with the internet, you can now do that. You can call yourself anything you want. Yeah. I don't call myself a motivational blogger. I'm just a blogger because as you say, a blog means weblog. I log my thoughts.
Yeah, and that's what it should be, right? It's an account. It's an online account of what you get up to. The fact of the matter is, anyone with a computer and a Google account now is a blogger. And for me, I don't care what you do or what you talk about or who you are and that kind of thing. But I think for people out there, if you take something as gospel from a blogger, you shouldn't be taking something as gospel from a blogger. You should research it.
Absolutely.
So it's that person's opinion, that it's not based in any kind of fact or experience. For example, if you are a mountain climber or you're an action adventurer and that's what you write about, for me, I would believe that because you've experienced it, and that's a life you live.
Right.
And so I take it in that spirit. But if you're just someone who watches mountain climbing videos and then you tell me that this is how it should be done, you have to take that with a dose of salt.
Right. So it's the challenge that you're putting out to bloggers is more be careful how you communicate.
It's walk your talk.
It's walk your talk and be careful how you communicate.
Yes,
So it's
100%.
Don't tell us what to do. Give us your thoughts.
It's how you present information for me.
Right.
Do you know, like, for example, what blogs initially was started out to be was this account of someone's personal life. We mentioned weblogs, but it was just based in a very personal experience of it. But now they're marketing themselves as experts, and that for me is wrong. It's inappropriate.
Absolutely. Okay. So
Sorry to interrupt, but
No problem.
you know what the problem with that is that if you call yourself a fashion blogger and you go to a fashion show and you slag somebody's range out with no knowledge of fashion or garments or fabrication or styling or any of that, but you've got 20,000 people who are listening to you and that's what they believe. And so you're informing opinion, which is not necessarily true.
I
And
like
that is
that.
a problem for me.
But wouldn't you say that celebrities are doing that anyway? You know, celebrities have a following because of they're a good actor or they're sexy or whatever. So they've got millions of followers on Twitter and Facebook, and they're often slagging people, and there's an absolute irresponsible attitude to who they're slagging, but they've got no expert knowledge on that.
Does make it right.
Yeah.
100%. I would agree with you.
But you mentioned in the show,
But they're not writing blogs, though.
Sure.
And I think like Twitter or a Facebook post is very different to a blog.
Okay.
Because what you're doing in a blog is you're opining. Whereas with Twitter and that kind of thing, you're giving an opinion in 140 characters.
Sure.
A personal thought, if you will.
In the show this morning, you spoke about regulations. You hinted towards regulating blogging. I mean, don't you think that's a bit hardcore, a bit extreme, especially for the internet? I mean, the internet's all about
necessary.
But the internet's all about liberation. It's all about freedom. How would you regulate blogs? And secondly, don't you think it's an infringement on the freedom of speech?
But I think no, I don't actually, because I think it's very necessary. Because what you can do as a blogger is go out there and say whatever you want to. You can go and say, I think Pick and Pay is crap. And that's great. I think that the food aisle in Pick and Pay is the worst I've ever seen in the whole world or whatever. But that's your personal opinion. You can actually do that. But you can't do that in mainstream media, where if you write an article about it, you're going to have to give Pick and Pay a right to reply. So those kind of structures that you have in mainstream media should be imposed on bloggers as well. You need to have an ombudsman. You need to have a complaints commission, because the fact of the matter is, let's just say I'm a chef and I'm running a restaurant and you come in there and you take personal umbrage to something that I've cooked or I've done, and you slag me off on your blog. I need recourse. I need to be able to respond to that. You need to give me a right to reply, and which bloggers don't do, and I find that offensive.
That's interesting. Do you not think that's going against the very spirit of the internet, though? The internet's all about liberal freedom.
So what? We just do whatever we want to? I mean, what is the end game, you know? Because the fact of the matter is, why you need regulations is because I could have, let's just say I read your blog, right? I don't like you as a person. I have some axe to grind with you. I could slag you off. I could say things about you that are libelous, that are slanderous, but there's no recourse. There needs to be some kind of recourse.
No,
I'm not saying impose censorship. I'm saying there needs to be some kind of recourse. So if I feel aggrieved as someone who's appeared on your blog, I need to be able to take that somewhere and say, this is not on. I need to respond to this. It's like things like even TripAdvisor and all of that. You know, people go off and say, I went to this hotel and it is the worst hotel in the world because the sheets are damp. You could say things like that. It could be that person's personal experience of that. It could have happened on that day. And then you go on a site like TripAdvisor and you say something like that, and then no one can, there's no right of reply. So So for me, there needs to be these checks and balances.
So, like at the moment, I'm not very familiar with TripAdvisor, but TripAdvisor, you're saying there is no...
No, but
right
so you can go on and say, well, actually, that's not the case. But there's no room for like other comments on that. There's no room for people to comment on that and say, well, actually, what you're talking is crap.
On TripAdvisor or in general?
On TripAdvisor.
Okay,
I'm talking about, so in terms
Yeah.
of the broader picture is there needs to be checks and balances. There needs
But the
to
internet
be
is so... What I'm getting at is the internet's so big. I mean, that would become a very sluggish and bureaucratic process to try and regulate the whole internet.
I'm not saying regulate the internet. I'm saying regulate what people say on blogs. I think it is. You absolutely need to do it.
How would you
absolutely
do that, though?
need to do it?
How
Well,
would
you have an ombudsman.
Give us an example.
You have an ombudsman. So, for example, if you go on your blog and you're a food blogger and you say that I am using horse meat in my burgers, for example. Or as a blogger, you say, I tasted the burger, it has a distinct tang of horse meat, or whatever it is these bloggers say on their food blogs. They can go on and get away with that without any kind of recourse.
Right.
But it maligns me as a chef and it maligns me as a restaurant owner. And I have no right to reply to that. And there's no recourse. I want to be able to legally say, you've maligned my restaurant, you've cost me customers, and you are impacting my business. And you can't actually do that. So there needs to be some kind of legal recourse to that. And that's all I'm saying. There just needs to be a structure in place to yeah, I mean, the word regulate sounds so restrictive, but it's not.
But, okay, so I want to extrapolate this all the way down to, as you said, the end game. So let's say, for instance, we have an ombudsman set up, and, for instance, Joe Blogs writes a blog. Joe Blogs, can you believe it? Didn't even think of that. But anyway, so Joe Blogs writes a blog about Tashes, right? And says, I tasted horse meat, it was horrendous. Tashes goes to the ombudsman and says, listen, we want to lodge a complaint against Joe Blogs. Joe Blogs doesn't respond. Then what? What would you suggest happens if he doesn't respond?
You need to go to court. There needs to be some kind of punitive measure. Because the fact of the matter is, if your blog is harming my business, if people are not coming into my restaurant and not coming in and spending money, you're harming my business.
So he gets handed a summons.
You get handed a summons and you pay a fine.
You need to... pay for what you've done.
Put your money where your mouth is.
So Joe Blog says, well, I can see I'm in trouble here. I'm going to move to the Seychelles. I'm going to run my blog from the Seychelles. Then what?
Well, I mean, that's what happens. But I don't, you know what, I think...
I'm just extrapolating.
I don't think... No, it's not like that. I mean, people have maligned people on international blogs as well.
Right.
And there have been cases where, for example, a South African blogger has maligned an international designer, and if you look at the media, there has been reports of that, and there has been recourse. They've either issued an apology or taken down the blog because they've got the lawyers involved. Because the fact of the matter, a lot of what is said on those blogs can be viewed as libel and can be viewed as slander.
Sure. See, what I'm getting at is bureaucracy. I'm anti-bureaucracy. I hate bureaucracy.
Sure. So am I.
The world today has become so slow. People can't make fast decisions because they're waiting to get through the red tape, right? And so let's take, for instance, I've been in a very similar situation. There is a blog about South Africa, which I'm not going to name, but there's a blog about South Africa which highlights a lot of the negatives about South Africa, and I came across one of these blogs and was very offended by what they said. So I just wrote a response. I went on my blog, not Legacy Levers, my personal blog, jamespreston.org, and I wrote a response. But yes, I'm a passionate guy. So I got very passionate about it and said, this is just not on, how dare they, rah-rah-rah-rah. And I mean, in hindsight, and that's often, I'm a think before you talk kind of guy. I'm a talk before you think kind of guy. And often I've said stuff, when I look back, I go, sure, I shouldn't have said it like that. Yeah. But I did. I was in Woolworths coffee shop, and I just let rip on my blog. All I did was post it on Facebook and Twitter and left it. You know, my jamespreston.org gets about 150 to 200 hits per post in a week, right? Yeah. So I didn't think anything was going to go up. It went crazy. For some reason, it just got shared a little bit, and next thing, the author of this blog saw that I'd written this blog and boy, I've never had such hate mail in my life.
Yeah.
I had hate mail like you cannot believe in those comments. And eventually, so all I did was like, well, flip. I didn't want, and there were tears, and it was just, these people were seriously offended, and I felt bad. So all I did was I changed the blog to, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to, and I left it at that. So I basically took the blog down and replaced it with an apology, and I left it.
Yeah.
So no bureaucracy, just the community came together and the community sorted it out. Would that not be a better solution?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that for some things, yes, 100%. I have that on a weekly basis, by the way, where people react to that thing. I did a thing on expats. I did a show on expats and whinging about South Africa. We then did a blog about it, and I promise you, it kind of went viral. Expats from all over the world were writing hate mail, and somebody started his very own blog just to tell me what a horrible human being I was. But the fact is, so it can get out of hand. And you say you're sorry like you did. I mean, I don't. I'm sorry because my opinion's my opinion.
Right.
And that's how it should be viewed. I'm not saying that my opinion is gospel, but such is the nature of opinion-based things. Anyway. The point I'm making is, yes, I agree with that. It can be as simple as, I'm so sorry, and take it down, or issue an apology. But what about where businesses are affected directly through a blog? What if you're losing money? Your ability to earn a living is directly impacted by someone saying something incredulous on a blog that's not true.
Right. No, that's fair. Okay, I wanted to get some. I wanted to try to see if we could find some Twitter comments, because I did post a picture of you on the talk show this morning with Darren and put it on my Twitter and asked for two significant bloggers, Varushka, I forget her surname, but I know her as V, and Kath Jenkin. Two for me.
I think I follow them on Twitter.
Two of the best Durban bloggers, anyway.
Yeah. Is that Varushka Ramsamy?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it. So I want to try and put up my Twitter and find that. So while we pull that up, I wanted to segue. And I've missed it because now I have been distracted. But
you're very funny.
So the internet, right? I think I was going down the road of the internet and talking about regulation versus the community coming together. Yeah. That's where I wanted to go. I wanted to segue into your hate mail. I'm a sensitive guy. I'm actually quite a sensitive guy. And I don't do hate mail very well. I mean,
But you can't be, though. If you're a blogger, you put yourself out there.
Sure.
You need to expect it.
Yeah. And so, but we take that blog, for instance. I was very passionate, and I said some things not hateful, but more kind of, come on, this person, this blogger must be taken to task. This blogger must catch a wake up. What's wrong with them? They really,
So why do you feel that you couldn't expect a response back?
Because I didn't think they would ever read it.
Because people are like that, though.
Yeah.
It depends on how you present yourself. Because you presented yourself in that passionate manner, which that person received it in that, and he was reactionary.
And I didn't think they would ever read it. And then they got all very offended. So my point is this, and I then got
he was reactionary, but he's entitled to that.
But his followers gave me hate mail like you can't believe. And I've never received that kind of hate mail in my life. Yeah. And I'm a pastor, I'm in the ministry, so I've had all kinds of pushback, but never that kind of hate mail. So
James, if you're in, sorry to interrupt, but if you're in the public eye, you can't expect everyone to love you.
No, sure, I know that, and I'm learning that. But that's what I want to ask you. How do you deal with that hate mail? Because for me, I just want to brush it under the carpet. I want to deal with it. I want to apologize and just, I'm sorry. So I'm now 30 years old. We're a product of our upbringing, so it's very difficult to just suddenly, you must have thick skin. It's very hard to just say that.
Sure.
So what would your advice be to someone like me? And while you give that advice, I'm going to be pulling up my Twitter here. What would your advice be to me? How to deal with that hate mail?
Your thick skin would develop over the years. I mean, when I started out in this industry 24 years ago, of course, everything affected me, and I was working in television, so it was quite immediate, and you think you want everyone to love you, and it was that. And then over time, you just realize that you want this affirmation from people that you don't know, and people that just don't contribute meaningfully to your life. So you've got to see it like that. And everyone has an opinion, doesn't mean that you have to you have to agree with that and take that energy on board. I mean, that's what I do.
Right.
It's water off a duck's back now, and I mean, no, and I know what you're saying. I know that you're saying that it's easier said than done, but in time, it really, really is. You know, haters gonna hate. What are you gonna do? Hey,
Haters gonna hate potatoes.
I don't want to say though. I have to say something that I've written this morning, which you touched on, and I said people are now using blogs as currency, which is also fine to the extent that you can't things can't always stay they were. The internet and social media has revolutionized our world, so there are people who make their living doing things today that didn't exist 50 years ago, and not
which
to
is
take,
awesome. I love that.
Yeah, and not to take anything away from professional photographers, say, out there, but before digital photography, there were people making a pretty good living from taking amateur pictures, and there are clearly people making a living from blogging. But I don't think we necessarily need to be too conservative about these things. You need to take it from whence it comes.
Good. Okay, well, we didn't get a reply from Kath or from V. Kath just replied saying, sorry, she missed it. Well, Kath, don't you worry. You can catch the interview and listen and watch it later if you are able. But, Terence, I sincerely appreciate you coming on to the show at such short notice like that. Thank you. Happy birthday for the other day.
Thank you very much.
And
I don't know what value I added, to be quite honest, but it's just my opinion.
Well, that's what it's all about.
I'm not a hater.
No, you're not.
Like I said at the top of this that I read a lot of blogs. I consume it voraciously. So yeah, but you just need to be able to take it from whence it comes.
Absolutely. Well, Terence Pillay, we look forward to having you again on the show another time.
Thanks, James Preston.
Thank you so much. Keep leaving your legacy, man.
Yeah, cool.